Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. At this time, the state would call on Ms. Aubrey Humphrey to the stand.
Ma'am, if you would please stand, place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thanks.
Mr. Waller.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Humphrey, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Will you please state your name for the record?
My name is Aubrey Humphrey.
And Ms. Humphrey, where do you currently work?
Currently, I'm employed with a company called G4S here in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Okay. And Ms. Humphrey, were you formerly employed by the City County Bureau of Identification?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us what agency the City County Bureau of Identification is?
City County Bureau of Identification, also known as CCBI here in Wake County, is the forensic agency that responds to all law enforcement agencies within Wake County to assist with any and all crime scene investigation needs.
Okay. And how long were you with CCBI?
At the time that I left CCBI, I'd been there approximately 7 years.
Okay. And what year did you leave CCBI?
Shortly after this case in 2014.
Okay. So you've been gone since 2014.
Yes, sir.
And when did you start there?
In 2007.
What were your what was your duties as an agent with CCBI, ma'am?
As a agent, and at the time I was a senior agent for my squad, all the agents at CCBI are expected to respond to scenes where they are requested from the local law enforcement agencies to conduct any evidence collection, preservation, and documentation at crime scenes in Wake County.
Okay. And once you collect evidence there at a scene, do you pass it on to other individuals to maybe do some sort of analysis?
Yes, sir. In various different scenes, we will pass on evidence to any and all local law enforcement as well as laboratory investigation.
And Ms. Humphrey, on the night of April 9th of 2014, were you working as a senior agent with the City County Bureau of Identification?
Yes, sir, I was.
And did you have the opportunity to respond to the location of 1125 Lake Glad Road?
Yes, sir, I did.
And when did you respond there, Ms. Humphrey?
It was shortly after midnight on the night of April 10th, although the call had come out to the Wake County Sheriff's Office prior to that.
So on April 10th of 2014, it looks like that was a Thursday, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so you got there shortly after midnight around 12:18?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you kind of describe for the members of the jury the scene when you arrived there?
When I arrived at the scene, we had been dispatched to the scene shortly after midnight. I didn't arrive until almost 1 o'clock in the morning. It was, the entire scene was contained by the Wake County Sheriff's Office. I met with various members of the Wake County Sheriff's Office as well as other members of CCBI.
The video that we just saw, kind of the house and the police cars in the background, is that the general condition of the scene when you arrived there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I misspoke. You were dispatched at 12:18 and then arrived at 1 a.m.?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so the scene when you got there was, I guess, fairly chaotic.
At the time, yes.
Okay. What were you the only CCBI agent to respond there that night or that morning?
No, sir. I met with 2 other members of CCBI.
Who else was out there with you?
At the time, Agent Thompson, who is now Agent Louder, as well as Investigation Supervisor Jones.
And when you arrived there on the scene, how does CCBI get their, I guess, kind of orders and in terms of what they're needed for that night?
In order for us to respond to a scene, we have to be requested by a local law enforcement agency to respond. We are then dispatched through a computer dispatch as well as a radio dispatch, and we are requested to respond and meet with that local law enforcement agency at the scene or any other secondary location if that's requested as well.
And do you know which agency you met with on the morning in question?
It was Wake County Sheriff's Office.
And do you recall which detective or sergeant or deputy that you spoke with that night?
There were multiple members. The main individuals that I spoke with were going to be Sergeant Lillquist and Investigator Weaver.
And at that point, Ms. Humphrey, do you kind of get a general overview of the scene and what Wake County Sheriff's Office needs your help to assist with?
Yes, sir. We're briefed when we first arrive, and we are taken through a walkthrough of the scene if that is permitted at that time, depending upon what's needed from us.
What was the general information you received when you arrived there?
When I arrived to the scene, I was advised that there were 3 victims at the time from gunshot wounds, 2 who had been pronounced deceased at the scene, and a 3rd victim who had been transported by the Wake County EMS department prior to our arrival.
And were there any specific items of evidence that you were assigned to look for that night, Agent Humphrey, or just kind of anything that y'all thought might be relevant?
Due to the nature of what had occurred, we had bits and pieces of information at that time, so we were requested to do an overall crime scene examination, photo documentation, and evidence collection, as well as measurements if that was required. Due to the fact that this scene was more of a large scene in the fact that it was portions of the scene were indoors and portions of the scene were outdoors, we, among the 3 of us with CCBI that night, determined who would take what portions of the scene to determine if and all evidence items that were of relevance.
And what portion of the scene were you assigned to that night?
I was requested to take the rear portion of the residence and the field behind the house.
And Ms. Humphrey, when a CCBI agent processes a scene, are there certain steps that you go through in order to, as you say, kind of preserve and document the scene?
Yes, sir. When we first arrive to a scene, we do an overall canvas of the scene. We do a walkthrough and a comparison of notes with the agency that is at the scene initially. Once we do our initial walkthrough, we will do overall photographs just to encompass the scene as a whole without moving or changing any of the evidence around, without taking any measurements. Those are just considered overall photographs. On scenes such as this, where they are large scenes, we will do what's called a 360 photograph, where a camera is placed in different locations throughout the scene, and a 360-degree view of the scene is taken to show the scene in its entirety. And in this situation, that was done in 2 different locations in the backyard.
And how about videos? Do you do videos as well?
Once those photos are completed, or sometimes simultaneous as those are completed, the senior agent or investigator on the scene will take a crime scene video where that is a real-time walkthrough of the scene to document it as it was found.
And you mentioned that you want these photographs and videos to document the scene as it's found. I mean, so no processing has been done at that point once when the photos and videos are taken.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, so it's as you found it when you start your first process.
Yes, sir.
Okay. After photographs and videos are taken, what do you do next as an agent?
Depending upon the scene, with this one being a deceased victim in the backyard, measurements are taken for different locations of items of evidence that are considered to be deemed valuable or of relevance. Once those measurements are taken, more close range photographs are taken using number placards and or letter placards, depending upon the items of evidence to be collected.
And Agent Humphrey, you said, Miss Humphrey now, you said that your responsibility was the front of the house and also the rear of the residence. Is that right?
The front of the residence and the interior were both handled by Agent Thompson Louder. I handled the backyard of the residence as well as the field behind.
May I approach the witness?
Yes.
we might need to be heard.
All right, members of the jury, I'll ask you to step in the deliberation room for a moment. Leave your notepads. Please don't discuss the case among yourselves. Yes, sir.
Your Honor, I think this is appropriate time. We had talked pre-trial about having a heinous hearing when we got to body photographs. And these are different than some of the other photographs that were had.
All right.
Your Honor, for the record, I'm handing up photographs that have labeled as Sylvester. I'll also go ahead. I'll also go ahead and hand up the photographs I have marked for Anglia Taylor.
Yes, sir. Around on specific concerns you have or specific images.
If I could, I had a chance to look at those photographs. I mean, they've been served before, but the ones specifically, it was sort of at that point that I noticed that it was time to have the hearing. If we could, when you're done looking, if we could have a look at those
Yes.
photographs again, and then we can make.
Attention with respect to publishing of evidence, publishing all photographs
sir.
that you have admitted.
Yes, sir, and using the projector there beside
Yes,
the jury stand, not the one that drops down behind the defendant's head.
Yes, sir.
left the Anglia pictures. I thought that I got them off the printer, but I can pull them up on the projector while I have them here, if we want to go ahead and look at them right now.
I'd prefer you get the hard copies rather than displaying them in the courtroom.
Okay.
Mr. Brown here, or you wanted to look at those?
Yes, sir.
You know, we'd have, well, objection maybe to all, but I'm mainly worried about sort of the cumulativeness of having all of 89, 88, 87, 86, in particular, having all four of those, they seem to be cumulative. And I'd like to pass those ones up.
Well, pass them all up. Yeah, if you
I'll
would.
show them to the state with the four that I'm specifically.
Yes.
So where these four are the ones that we close on, close off, four shots, right? Yeah.
These ones we are not allowed to specific objection, we can add those up as well.
All right, I would want to see all of
You
them.
might need those to rule on.
Yes, these seem to be, these don't seem as cumulative as the other ones.
All right. I had a different view of cumulative than you did, but that's, it's all right. For what purpose is the state introducing the photographs?
Your Honor, these are illustrative of how Mr. Taylor was found there at the scene. I think they give one location of his body, two there, the gunshot wounds as seen there at the scene. the first group of photographs has his shirt on and shows the amount of blood that he lost there as a result of the gunshot wounds to his chest. And then there are several photographs with his shirt up, and I believe, in speaking with Ms. Humphrey just this morning, that she will be able to describe the general areas of his chest and back where the bullet holes entered and exited his body. So I think they're highly relevant to show Mr. Taylor at the scene that night after he was found, showing the condition of his body and also illustrating where the gunshot wounds came in. I don't believe there's any photographs that are exactly the same. They're different angles and note different items of evidence. I believe item number 12 is marked there in a couple of the photographs as well.
Right. Let me, I've divided it into two groups that I think might be sufficient. Let me ask you to approach Mr. Waller and take those, and if you could share them, and I'll explain the ones that I believe would be admissible without being cumulative, and then as to those that are not, that I would suggest are not admissible under Hennis, and that's State versus Hennis, Henniss. It's a 1988 Supreme Court case. So the stack that begins with the number 86, those would be the ones that I would suggest are admissible. That shows Mr. Taylor in a prone position as he was found. 87 is a closer. Right, those are the ones that I would suggest are admissible.
86, okay.
Right. 87 is also a closer view of the same prone position as he was found. 89 is then from the top without the shirt being lifted to show the wounds. 93 is a picture of Mr. Taylor showing his back with his shirt on. 94, I believe, is showing his back with his shirt lifted. And then 95 is just an item of evidence, a shoe. So is there any reason that closer images of those wounds is necessary, or is there a different angle that you believe is relevant, Mr. Waller?
I think in using State's exhibit number 89 is Mr. Taylor with the shirt up. State's exhibits 90 and 91 are a close-up, so that I believe Ms. Humphrey will actually say are where the actual wounds are on Mr. Taylor's chest. There's close-ups of those, and as you see, in 89 there's a lot of blood that covers up the bullet holes, and I think that 90 and 91 help further illustrate where those bullet holes were on Mr. Taylor. 89 is in my left hand, and 90 and 91 are in my right hand.
right, I'll allow 91 as well. I think that 90 is cumulative. All right, so these two are admitted or would be allowed.
So that takes us to taking out 88 and 90. And then 94.
Well, I've got, so 88 and 90, and then I've got 91, 92, I believe, are out. I would say 94 would be permitted.
91 is the one you just let in.
Okay,
91 is.
all right,
We'll, for the record, renew our objection to 91.
all right.
What
So,
was he- what was it?
okay, so the ones that are in right now are 86, 87, 89, 91, 93, 94, 95. So if you want to talk about 92, we can talk about that one.
92. 92, I believe, goes along with 94 and does show the close-up of the exit wound on his back when they approach with those two.
All right,
And I would point out in consideration of all this too, is that there's also going to be a medical examiner showing autopsy photos as well.
Well, what I would say though is the Hennis case, I think in Hennis there was 50-some photographs that were admitted. And this is at the scene as he is found, and I believe we're dealing with 4 photographs here. So I think we're well, respect your Honor's ruling on this, but I believe we're well below the Hennis mark, even if all of these photographs were introduced. They all show different angles. They all show entry wounds and exit wounds. There are no duplicative photos of the body in the same position. They all show a different angle on things. So I'm aware of the Hennis case, and I'm, excessive and grotesque and whatnot, but I think we're well below that, or I'd argue to you, we're well below that if all of these photographs come into evidence. I mean, 50 photographs versus 4 is a pretty substantial difference. And yes, there's going to be medical examiner photos, but that's a completely different scenario.
I think the whole purpose of Hennis was doing the 4-free analysis and taking that all into consideration, and it's kind of developed throughout the years. And I think it is a consideration that it will be a medical examiner testifying to similar things.
all right, could I see 93 as well?
If you don't mind, I think we've got them shuffled up here sufficiently. If I may just give you everything again. Okay. We've got the tables ready as well at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Yeah, 90.
Six and 87.
All right, I think 92 shows an angle that is different from 94. I mean, in the exercise of my discretion, I certainly would find that the state's entitled to show an image of the body as it was found on the scene that illustrates the location of the gunshot wounds and the blood. What, in the exercise of my discretion, I believe that if you have one shot that shows the overall picture and that the witness can explain that from that one shot, zooming in on close-ups of that doesn't have that great a probative value. So that's one of the things that I'm factoring in here, but it is appropriate to show each wound, and I believe that 92 and 94 do show different, a different angle of back wounds. So that would be, so 92 would be allowed as well. All right, so that gets us 86, 87, 89, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95 would be admitted. 88 and 90 would be excluded. All right.
You ready for Ms.
Yes.
Taylor's? Okay. And I apologize, these don't have the evidence stickers on them yet.
All right.
I'm upstairs or something, but they do have the CCBI numbers on the back.
All right.
And so,
Okay, we'll identify them by CCBI number.
I'm sorry, I don't know if Ms. Brown and Ms. Hamburger saw those before I did.
Let me go through them
Okay.
quickly, and then I'll.
I'm gonna take these off. So that's this one. That's out. You're in. Okay.
All right. Ms. Brown.
And if I may just, I know there are more pictures in that group that look like they are the same, but one thing that we have, the shirt.
Yeah, I would be inclined to admit all of these. So, Mr. Brown, if you want to take a look at them and see which ones you have specific objections to.
And I have not seen them beforehand.
All right.
believe so. I have those grouped by examining the bodies, and I think that's it.
All right.
Yeah, I think that, I don't know of any others, and I don't believe that there's any, I don't think there's anything else specifically that we've objected to other than
Okay.
body shots.
All right, very good. Let's.
Did you get our notebook? Is there a piece of notebook paper that we handed up as well?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, let's bring jurors, please.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're now ready, I believe, to proceed with further evidence for the state.
Yeah, I'll come back and forth, I think. All right. Thank you, Your Honor. May I approach the witness again?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Humphrey, I'm gonna hand you a group of photographs, and I think you said one of your primary responsibilities as an agent working the scene is to take photographs. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And again, you take the photographs as you find the evidence there that night, and document the scene as you find it there that night. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Let's start with a group of photographs, and I apologize, Madam Clerk, these are going to be a little bit out of order, but exhibits 103 through 108. If you'll take a look at that group of photographs and tell me if you recognize what that group of photographs represents. Or depicts.
Yes, sir, I do recognize these photographs, and these are going to be the overall photographs that I took of the backyard area of the residence.
Okay. And do those photographs fairly and accurately depict the backyard or back area of the residence on the night in question?
Yes, sir.
And any changes or alterations to these photographs?
No, sir.
And can you tell us a little bit about what your primary responsibilities were when you were examining the back area of the residence that night?
Based on the information that we received when we initially responded to the scene, we were advised that one of the two deceased victims had initially run through the back door of the residence and out into the backyard. And therefore, my primary goal at this point was to document the scene as it was found from the rear of the residence back into the field behind the residence.
And when you were examining the rear of the residence there, Ms. Humphrey, did you see any evidence of any firearms back there?
I did see fired shell casings in the backyard, yes, sir.
But no firearms at that time?
No firearms, no, sir.
Your Honor, at this time I would ask to introduce State's Exhibits 103 through 108 into evidence for illustrative purposes, all being depictions of the backyard.
Any objection?
No objection.
They are allowed.
Now I'm going to hand you State's Exhibits 102 through, 96 through 102. Yes, ma'am. 96 through 102, and I'll ask you if you recognize this series of photographs.
Yes, sir, I do.
What do those photographs depict, ma'am?
These photographs are what we consider a mid-range photograph of specific items of evidence that were to be collected. In these photographs, they were initially marked as potential items that would be of interest by the Wake County Sheriff's Office prior to my arrival. These photographs also have numbered cones to indicate the items of evidence that would be collected. These are just what we consider to be a mid-range photograph, meaning they are closer on the actual items of evidence, but not to scale at that point.
And these photographs there, is there a piece of metal there in those photographs that was of specific interest to you that night?
Yes, sir. There's a large, I'm not exactly sure what kind of metal this is, but there's a large flat piece of metal that was in the backyard that evening that had various items of evidentiary value.
And all these photographs seem to are centered around that metal piece that was in the backyard there.
Yes, sir.
And I believe there's a shoe and potential drop of blood and a shell casing around that metal, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And are these photographs fair and accurate depictions of the area around that metal piece that night?
They are.
Your Honor, I would ask to introduce State's Exhibit 96 through 102 in evidence at this point for illustrative purposes.
Any objection? They are admitted for illustrative purposes.
Now I'm going to hand you what has been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibits 109 through 116. Just make sure all those numbers are there, and take a look at those photographs and tell me if you recognize those photographs.
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay. And are they all in order from 106?
109.
Excuse me, 109 through 116?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what do those photographs, or what area of the back of the residence do those photographs appear to depict, ma'am?
In the rear of the residence, there were two, I would call them sheds in the backyard, as well as this large piece of metal and a barrel, a large metal barrel that appeared to be a burn barrel, possibly. And this is a depiction of that barrel near a basketball goal.
Excuse me. And Ms. Humphrey, did you find some evidentiary items around that burn barrel that you photographed and are depicted in these photographs?
Yes, sir.
What were those evidentiary items?
In these photographs, similar to the photographs of the large metal piece, these are other fired shell casings from projectiles with numbered numbered cones to indicate the items of evidence.
And these photographs fairly and accurately display that area of the residence that night?
Yes, sir, they do.
Your Honor, at this time I would ask to introduce State's Exhibits number 109 through 116 in evidence for illustrative purposes.
Any objection?
No.
They're admitted for illustrative purposes.
And then finally, State's Exhibits number 86 through 86, 87, 89, 91, 92, 93, 94, and 95. Take a look at those photographs and tell me if you recognize what they depict.
Yes, sir, I recognize these photographs.
What do those photographs depict, ma'am?
These photographs depict the overall and mid-range photographs of the deceased victim that was found in the rear portion of the residence.
Okay, and is that individual now been identified as Sylvester Taylor?
Yes, sir.
And do these photographs indicate the location where he was found and any evidentiary items that may be associated around his body?
They do.
And some of those photographs you mentioned, ma'am, are close-ups. Did you try to take photographs to depict the wounds that you found on him there that night?
Yes, sir.
And do these photographs also fairly and accurately represent those wounds as you found them there that night?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, at this time I would ask to introduce those previously identified photographs into evidence for illustrative purposes.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, we bring the objection for reasons previously given.
All right, they are admitted for illustrative purposes.
Thank you, Your Honor. And permission to publish these 4 different groups of photographs to the members of the jury using the screen.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Let me have just a moment. All right. Ms. Humphrey, we'll start with just kind of your general description of the exterior of the residence, and I'll start with State's Exhibit number 103. If you can tell us what you see there, ma'am.
This is an overall photograph of the rear portion of the residence. The illuminated doorway up near the deck area is going to be the rear door exiting the residence, and a large deck with stairs leading down into a fenced-in backyard.
And would it assist you, Ms. Humphrey, to stand up and kind of point to some of these items here as you're talking about them?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, permission for Ms.
Yes.
Humphrey to stand up. And just make sure you keep your voice up, ma'am, since you'll be away from the microphone. It's kind of hard to tell in this photograph based on the lighting, but was there a fence area around the back of the residence there?
Yes, sir.
And can you show that to the members of the jury?
It is very difficult to tell, but you can see it's kind of a metal gated fence area leading around, and it completely encompasses the rear portion of the residence.
And yeah, it kind of like almost like a chicken wire fence.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, we'll move to State's Exhibit number 104. And what do you see there?
Again, this is another photograph of the rear area. The rear portion of the residence was fairly cluttered with different items, large buildings, vehicles, and smaller items throughout the yard. This is the basic same perspective as the previous photograph, just turned so that you can see vehicles as well as a carport and this basketball goal, which I mentioned earlier.
Now, as part of your examination of the rear of the residence there, were you assigned to at least document the vehicles that were found in the backyard?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and are these 3 vehicles depicted here?
Yes, sir.
And can, just for the record, you describe each one of those vehicles for us?
There's appears to be a church van, a Dodge van that is located here on the left side of the photograph, as well as a white pickup truck and a smaller minivan in the rear portion of the photo.
Now, ma'am, to be clear, did you actually examine these vehicles that night in terms of going inside them and searching them in that way?
No, sir, they didn't appear to be altered in any way.
Okay. So you just documented them and took photographs
Yes,
of them? We'll go to State's Exhibit number 105. And what do you see there?
Again, this is a little bit closer of that chicken wire, as we're calling it, fenced-in backyard area. And this is from the perspective in that previous photograph where you saw the church van as well as the white pickup truck. So this is standing, looking parallel with the side of the house towards the backyard into the field area.
No, in that photograph, ma'am, it appears that the gate to the fence is open. Do you recall if that was the condition of that gate when you took this photograph?
Yes, sir. It was slightly ajar when we arrived at the scene.
And do you know from speaking with individuals that had gone through the scene before you got there whether or not that gate was opened or closed when first responders first arrived?
I believe it was open.
We'll go to State's Exhibit number 106. What do you see there, ma'am?
This is a photograph of, as I described previous, the two sheds that were located on the property. One was more of an enclosed shed, the other was just kind of an open, smaller area, covered area. And this was on the side of the residence in the backyard.
Now, Ms. Humphrey, do you recall if you actually went into these sheds that night?
No, sir, I did not.
You did not go in?
I did not.
And why didn't you go in that night? Was that for other agencies to do?
Yeah, at the time, it was in the middle of the night and it was very dark, and the Wake County Sheriff's Office was advised to hold the scene secured until daylight so that a further examination would be conducted.
And what do you mean when you say hold a scene?
When we advise an agency to hold a scene, we're asking the agency to maintain a crime scene area around the scene, not let anyone be permitted into the area, and not alter the area in any way.
In looking around these sheds and taking these general exterior photographs, at any point did you see any weapons, firearms out in this area, Ms. Humphrey?
No, sir.
Now we're going to go to State's Exhibit number 107, and if you can tell us what you see there.
This is going to be one of those sheds that was in the photograph before, as well as the basketball goal and barrel. And this is looking directly into the field behind the residence. You can see that metal platform, I guess we'll call it, that was located there, as well as in the far distance here, the deceased victim.
So those flags you see in the background are where Mr. Taylor was located.
Yes, sir.
And then State's Exhibit number 108. What do you see there, ma'am?
This is the same photograph, just from a different perspective, looking back towards, again, now you'll see the burn barrel and the goalpost here on the left, as well as those sheds and that metal portion on the right.
And on the far right of the screen, it appears that may be Mr. Taylor's foot in the photograph.
Yes, sir, on the very, very far side of the photograph.
Did you take any specific measurements as to how far his foot is from the rear of the evidence? Rear of the residence.
I believe the measurements that were taken to his body were from one of those sheds as a triangulation.
Okay. And just being out there and walking the scene, about how far is it from the back door of the residence to where Mr. Taylor's body is?
Approximately maybe 30 to 50 yards.
Okay. All right. Thank you, ma'am. All right. Stay right there, and we'll switch to one of the other areas that you looked at. Yeah, the metal barrel pictures. Mm-hmm. Okay, we're going to start with State's Exhibit number 109. And what do you see there, ma'am?
This is a photograph in the perspective in which this was taken. The field is located behind me. The rear portion of the residence is directly in front of me. And this goalpost and burn barrel are here. You can see the church van, the white pickup truck, and various other photographs that were taken are over to the right side of this photograph.
And what are you looking for there around the goalpost and this burn barrel? What potential items of evidence did you see there?
At the time, there were fired shell casings located on the ground around this area that we were going to be documenting, and therefore this is just an overall photograph of that area to show their location.
And we've called this a burn barrel, but there appear to be a lot of trash in this area.
It was extremely cluttered in that area.
Let's move to State's Exhibit number 110 and tell us what you see there.
This is considered a mid-range photograph with my placards placed down for items of evidence that were intended to be collected. This is around the base of that barrel in the ground.
Okay. And it looks like there are 6 different placards down at this point.
Yes, with the first one leading far here, and coming around 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
And so you put those cones down to mark where I guess, shell casings were found.
Yes, sir.
How about those yellow flags? Are those also CCBI's yellow flags?
No, those were placed prior to my arrival by the Wake County Sheriff's Office.
Now, Ms. Humphrey, you said this is an ongoing investigation, and there were other CCBI agents present at this time. Who were the other CCBI agents that were there?
Agent Catherine Thompson, also Catherine Louder at this point. She was maintaining the interior of the residence and the front portion of the front yard of the residence. And Investigation Supervisor Jones was also on scene to supervise over both scenes being conducted.
And are you and Agent Jones and Agent Thompson, are y'all communicating back and forth in terms of what's being found inside and outside while you're out there?
Yes, sir. We were both in direct contact, as well as information passed through the Sheriff's Office as well.
And at some point during your time of processing the backyard of the residence, did you become aware of potentially what type of shell casings that you needed to be on the lookout for in this in the backyard?
In the backyard, at the time when we arrived, we determined what areas would be conducted by which agents. At that point, I went to the backyard and Agent Thompson went inside. Throughout her investigation, she was finding a 380 shell casing within the residence, and therefore had given me what we could consider a heads up as far as what might be important in the backyard. But of course, all shell casings at a shooting scene are going to be valuable in some way, and therefore I had that information but did not limit my investigation at that point.
Okay. The shell casings that you found here around the burn barrel, were they the 380 shell casings or were they different shell casings?
No, sir. Predominantly in this area, I believe there were 22s.
Okay. Were there also some 12 gauge shell casings here as well?
Yes, sir, there were.
Okay. Did you find any 380 shell casings around this area that night?
Not that night, no.
Okay. All right. Now, you said this is a mid-range photograph. What do you mean by mid-range photographs?
It's intended to depict multiple items of evidence in an area, but no close range or close range photograph is what we consider to be a full frame photograph of that item of evidence with and without a scale. These are not considered to be close range photographs.
Let me go to State's Exhibit number 111, and what type of photograph is that?
This is, again, also a mid-range photograph, but it is showing a singular item of evidence.
Okay, and what item of evidence is this photograph depicting?
I believe, if I can refer to my report,
Sure.
this is going to be a .22 caliber shell casing.
And can you show the members of the jury on this photograph where that .22 caliber shell casing is?
It's very hard to depict, but it's going to be right here in front of this cone, this small little cylindrical item.
If I may zoom in just to maybe help you with that just a little bit. Does that help?
It does.
Okay. What do you see? What do you see there?
That's going to be the shell casing right here.
And you've got this this shell casing labeled as item 1. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Let's go to the next photograph, which is State's Exhibit number 112. What do you see there?
This is a secondary shell casing that was also located and collected. It's also going to be a .22 caliber shell casing, and you can see it right here in front of this cone. Again, that long cylindrical shiny object.
Okay. And we're still right there around the burn barrel where we saw 1 through 6 earlier.
Yes, sir.
Go to 113. What do you see there?
Again, another .22 caliber shell casing. Actually, this one is going to be 2 shell casings, I believe. Give me a minute to get my orientation here. There's one here, and then there's also a second one kind of buried a little bit underneath the dirt there, if you can see that.
See if I can zoom in for you there and help you out a little bit. Oop.
So that's the first that was on top of that area, and then the second is kind of buried underneath. Again, this was at night, so a lot of the illumination on these photographs is difficult to see.
The second shell casing we see here, and I'll ask you this more generally in a minute, but is it clearly under some debris that you've described?
Yes, sir.
And it looks like that's leaves and dirt and things of that nature. Okay. Number 4 is State's Exhibit 114. What do you see there, ma'am?
This is another shell casing, another 22 caliber shell casing in that same general area. You can see it laying right here on top of the dirt.
State's Exhibit 115. What do you see there?
Another fire 22 shell casing.
And that's number 5.
Yes, sir.
And then number 116.
And this is another 22 caliber shell casing located here in front of item 6 placard.
Okay. And I've gone back to the overall photograph. That's where you found these different shell casings there beside the burn barrel.
That's correct.
And Ms. Humphrey, you didn't do any specific analysis on these shell casings that night, did you?
No.
Based on what you saw there, what was the general condition of these shell casings, though?
These shell casings, in the random order that they're located and the condition that they were found, they appeared to be rather old. They appeared to have been weathered a little bit and seemed to have been there for a while.
Well, let's move. Talk about the metal piece. Okay. State's Exhibit number 96 there that we have. What do you see there, Ms. Humphrey?
This is that large piece of metal that we previously described with various items of evidence. Again, you'll see my cones indicating my items of evidence, as well as the yellow flags that were placed there prior to my arrival by the sheriff's office.
Okay. And this, it looks like a large piece of tin. Did it also appear to be fairly worn and have some debris and trash on it?
Yes, sir. It was quite rusted as well.
Okay. We'll go to State's Exhibit number 97. What do you see there?
This is, again, that same general area. That previous photograph was taken looking in the direction across. This is more perpendicular angle, showing 3 more items of evidence.
Okay, and we'll go ahead and kind of identify those items. Number 9 there that you see on the left side of the photograph, what item of evidence did you note there?
That's going to be another 22 shell casing.
Okay, and then number 10.
Number 10 is actually going to be a shotgun shell casing. It's much larger, and it's green with a kind of a copper color base.
And 11.
11 is going to be a cell phone that we recovered from the scene.
State's Exhibit number 98. What do you see there, ma'am?
That's going to be one black slipper. It appears to be slightly underneath the metal portion there. That is how it was found. And it was later determined that that was going to be, in fact, a left slipper if slippers have left at night.
And did you find the right slipper later on?
Yes, sir.
Where was that?
That was closer to the victim's body.
So, using our overall photograph, that's where number 7 was located beside that metal tin.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Item number 8 there. What do you see?
This is going to be a fired shotgun shell casing, a 12-gauge shotgun shell.
And item number 8 there, the shotgun shell casing. And again, looking at that shell casing, does it appear to be worn in any way?
Yes, sir. It appears to have rust, and the dew had fallen that night, so it does have dew on it as well.
And it was found there in that little crack that, or crevice on the metal tin.
Yes, sir.
Number 9, State's Exhibit 100. What do you see there?
This is my item number 9. This is going to be a fired 22 caliber shell casing, also on that metal roof portion.
And again, what was the general condition of that bullet, or shell casing?
It also appeared to be weathered. There was also what you can see. It's very difficult to tell the difference between blood and rust, but what appears to be blood in that area as well. But the shell casing itself appears to be fairly weathered.
Okay. When you say that what appears to be blood, let me see if I can zoom for you a little bit. Is that the rusted area that you're talking about where I have the hand icon?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then moving down, I guess below the cone a little bit and around the shell casing. When you say the what appears to be blood, where is that?
That's going to be these more droplet-looking items. You can see kind of the difference between the reds of the rust versus those droplet areas.
At that point, Agent Humphrey, did you do any collection of any DNA swabs or blood swabs on that on that blood?
Not at that time. That was discussed with the sheriff's office. It wasn't deemed to be necessary at that point.
And then number 10.
Number 10 is my item 10. You'll see the cone as well as the shotgun shell, the 12 gauge shotgun shell.
I'm sorry, 101. And again, did that shell casing appear to be worn and fairly old?
Yes, sir. You can see there's rust around the bottom of the shell casing, or what appeared to be rust.
And then number 11, number 102, what do you see there?
This is item of evidence number 11. This is the cell phone that was found face down in the grass at the time. I believe it was on at the time.
It was on.
It was on, yes, sir.
You mentioned in regards to the item number 9 there, the blood around that 22 shell casing, that you were directed to not do a blood swab on that. Can you tell us why you were directed not to?
At that time, the sheriff's office, like I said, was still gaining evidence at that point as well, and information. Myself and Sergeant Lilliquist discussed it, and it was deemed that we would be holding the scene secured. And so, given that we would be re-examining the scene at a later point in daylight, it was determined if it was needed at that point, we would collect it at that point, but not that evening.
And item number 9 there, or cone number 9 there, how close to is that blood to where Mr. Sylvester Taylor was found?
Mr. Taylor was found just a short distance in the grass beyond this metal area.
And let's go to Mr. Taylor. I'm going to show you I'm going to publish what has been entered as State's Exhibit number 86, if you can identify that photograph for us.
This is an overall photograph of the deceased victim in the field.
And is that the condition which you found Mr. Taylor there that night?
It is.
Okay. Had you moved him, or do you know if EMS or Wake County Sheriff's Office had moved him at all?
No, I was advised that EMS did not attempt any kind of life-saving measures.
Go to State's Exhibit number 87. What do you see there, ma'am?
This is going to be more of a mid-range photograph of the victim's body, showing just the overall condition of his body as it was found.
Now, in this photograph, State's Exhibit 87, Mr. Taylor has his white T-shirt pulled down. It looks like touching his boxers or pajama pants there. At some point, did you make the decision to lift that shirt?
Yes, sir.
And why'd you do that, Ms. Humphrey?
As an overall scene examination, a brief view of the body is requested and documented through photographs for use by the medical examiner. Beyond that, a more in-depth investigation of the body is conducted by the medical examiner's office. Therefore, we're requested not to alter the state of the body in any way if possible.
But you are asked to take photographs of the condition in which you find the decedent there at the scene.
That's correct.
And in the background here, item number 12, what is that item going to be?
That's going to be the other slipper that was described previously.
That matched number 7 that was found under the tin roof?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What do you see? This is State's Exhibit number 89. What do you see there?
This is a photograph, again, without moving the body as much as possible, raising his shirt. His shirt had been tucked into his pants. And this is just to raise the shirt to show the condition of the decedent's chest area.
And when you lifted his shirt there, Ms. Humphrey, did you see any injuries to Mr. Taylor?
Yes, it's quite difficult without wiping any of the blood away, which is what we're requested not to do by the medical examiner. It is very difficult to make out specific injuries. Therefore, that's why the overall photographs are taken and then a more in-depth investigation is conducted by the medical examiner.
And I know it may be hard to see on this photograph, but did you know gunshot wounds on Mr. Taylor's chest that morning?
Yes, that morning we noted possibly 3. Like I said, it's difficult to tell at the time.
And generally, Ms. Humphrey, using this photograph, can you indicate to the members of the jury where those gunshot wounds would have been?
He appeared to have gunshot wounds to this general area of his chest, in the upper portion of his chest.
And for the record, you are showing the upper portion of Mr. Taylor's chest.
That's correct.
I'm going to go to State's Exhibit number. No, State's Exhibit number 91. Can you tell us what you see there?
This appears to be a bullet wound. This is going to be standing at the decedent's left shoulder, looking directly down.
So let me back up to the last photograph. So where would
So my feet taking this photograph would be approximately in this bottom right corner of the photograph, turned. Taking the photograph of the shoulder, you'll see in the next photograph. This is the shoulder and arm coming down. So the decedent's head is going to be kind of off the bottom of the photograph there.
So it appears from this photograph and from your recollection that where I have the cursor now, that was the gunshot wound around his left nipple area.
Yeah, we determined it a possible gunshot wound at the time.
And State's Exhibit number 92. And what do you see there, ma'am?
This is another photograph of that same general area. You'll see that as well as a secondary wound possibly in this general area as well. That shirt, this red here and the white is where that shirt is pulled up.
So this was the area of a possible other gunshot wound.
Possibly.
Okay.
And it was hard to determine if that was going to be the front or the back or the side, so it was just determined to be the upper left chest area.
And you're instructed at this point not to wipe the blood off Mr. Taylor.
That's correct.
And then you said you found him on his back in the condition that we've seen. At some point, do you roll Mr. Taylor over to examine his back?
Yes, sir.
Okay. State's Exhibit number 93. What do you see there?
This is again the same position, just simply rolled over. So you'll see that the shirt is partially pulled up in the front from where we have done the front examination. We then roll him over to get the back area in relative frame of how he was found.
And after you roll Mr. Taylor over and document the shirt in this way, do you do like you did on the front side and lift the shirt as well?
Yes, sir. State's
Exhibit number 94, if you can tell us what you see there.
This is the lifted shirt with him rolled over, and it's a little difficult to see here, but you'll see this is actually going to be the decedent's right hand underneath him, and we've rolled him over so he's simply positioned with his back facing up. So this is actually going to be his left side.
And when you rolled Mr. Taylor over in this fashion and depicted and took this photograph, were you able to see whether or not there were any gunshot wounds or exit wounds on Mr. Taylor's back?
It did appear at the time to be one possibly in this upper area as well as more of a central area in the top portion of that photograph.
Where I have the cursor right above his hand, there is one potential gunshot wound or exit wound.
That's correct.
And then also here at the top of the photograph, another potential gunshot wound or exit wound.
That's correct.
Any other exit wounds that you saw that night about Mr. Taylor's back, Ms. Humphrey?
No, that was seen that night.
And then finally, State's Exhibit number 95. What do you see there?
That is just a more close-up of that slipper that was found near his foot.
Thank you, Ms. Humphrey. I don't believe I have any further pictures to show you at this point.
Thank you.
All right. You're not showing any additional photographs now?
No, sir.
All right, let's go ahead and take a recess then of 15 minutes until 10 minutes till 12. Members of the jury, I'll ask you to gather in the deliberation room at that time. And if you'll recall all my instructions and leave your notepads in your chairs.